Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming in on our next CoLab, which is a series on developing science experiences. And a science experience is a science-related content or product designed with human-centered design thinking principles and user experience strategies to delight, inform, and inspire audiences of support. In other words, science communication that doesn't need to use the word science in its communication. We've created a bit of a map to give you a better understanding on science experience, beginning with a story, beginning with the story of your research, and how that story can be translated through multiple channels, digital or otherwise, in order to build your audience into a group of fans and followers and greater support. In this particular CoLab, we are talking specifically about developing your research story. Hannah Arendt, who is a political theorist, put the idea of storytelling really well in a very simple quote, saying, "Storytelling reveals meaning without committing the error of defining it." When the storyteller defines the meaning of a story, you've removed of the allure of that story, the hook, or perhaps just what's exciting about that story. What is the hero's journey? Or you've pretty much defined the audience's journey. And that's really up to the audience if you want to build a more meaningful connection, to invite them in by reaching their hearts. Randy Olson, who is a scientist turned filmmaker, quoted in one of his books, "Although the mind may be part of your target, the heart really is the bullseye." So let's get started by introducing our first guest expert, Sarah El-Shafi. She is a doctoral candidate of integrative biology. I hope I said that right. At UC Berkeley. You want to go ahead and turn on your mic and your camera, then we'll go ahead and add you in. Sarah, can you hear us? Excellent.
You reading me?
Couple seconds to warm up. There she is.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Terrific.
You are in Berkeley, California, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. And the weather today is?
Beautiful.
Excellent, as it is, I guess, all the time. Right?
Pretty much.
So as I introduce guests, and just to let everybody know, I want to go through these introductions, get everybody, the three guests here on board. I've got a question for each of them. We'll talk a little bit about foundation, and then we want to go to a lot of great questions that came in through the website early on in preparation for this, and then we can also pepper in Q&A from everybody out there. So far, I see there are just about 100 people on here, which is great. 256, I think, registered. So it's a fantastic crowd today. Yeah, and it's really
people
cool.
From all over the world, it looks like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting. So so first, I want to start by asking you a question, Sarah, that how important is narrative to communicating science?
Well, narrative, I would argue, is really the most important thing about communicating science. Narrative is the oldest form of communication, and any communicator would tell you that. Narrative makes everything more interesting, more accessible, and that's for a reason. Research increasingly shows that our brains are actually wired to think and process and recall in terms of story. So narrative is really the backbone of all communication. Right.
And well, the hardest part, I guess, is starting. So where do you begin developing that narrative, and what do you need to start?
Well, it's really important to know who your audience is and to know what your goals are for that interaction. And again, this is pretty much standard advice for any kind of communication training, because it really is the most important thing to keep in mind always. But there's another crucial element there that needs to come first, and that is to know what your science means to you as a human being. So I encourage really spend some time meditating on that. What does science mean to you? Why are you drawn to it? What draws you to your particular field of study? Your first thought might be because it's awesome, but think beyond that.
Right.
Because understanding, if you really think about it, whether you realize it or not, there is a compelling reason for why you do what you do. And understanding that reason strengthens your own conviction in your endeavors. And conviction always comes across to people, whether you're spelling it out or not. And I think that having a strong and clear conviction in why you are pursuing your pursuits, and if that's balanced with an understanding of your audience, those are really the two most important things to being an effective storyteller and an effective communicator. The rest is just practice.
Sure. And those skill sets that are really gained over time, and how you can hone it and how you really define that for yourself and that process, and what going forward. We tell our clients all the time that why you do anything will be more meaningful and more important than how you do everything. And the origin story is like you said, and what does science mean to you? That's one of our first interview questions and that we have in conversations with new clients when we speak with science. And what brought you into this science? Describe your science to me, but what really brought you into it? That origin story. Everybody loves a good origin story. I mean, ask Marvel or DC Comics, and they're all X-Men, and they're all those origin stories are very popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And even at major film studios, that's where they start too. If somebody's preparing a treatment for a new film or a short film, they start by asking themselves, what were the formative experiences in your life? Why do you love this topic? Why do you connect to it personally?
Sure. So I want to actually ask you a little bit about your origin story, because for those that haven't read on our website some information, a little background on Sarah is, as a doctoral candidate and some interest in science communication, this idea of developing science through story as a workshop, and who you collaborated with in order to build this. Can you give us a little bit of that origin story? It's a great one.
Sure. Well, as I was really sinking my teeth into my doctoral program, I realized that I was really bad at communicating science. I was really struggling with it. I couldn't explain what I did in a way that was meaningful to my own family members, and that really bothered me. So I decided that I would really spend some time, and I knew that that would be important for my professional success as well. So I immediately started thinking about, well, how do you make people care about science? How do you get people to connect with a subject? You got to tell them a good story. So I thought, well, what if I started learning from professional storytellers? What if we brought professional storytellers to our scientific community and started learning from them and from their creative process? So I actually reached out to Pixar Animation Studios, which is not far from our campus here in Berkeley, and they responded. And so we had a pilot seminar with a couple of story artists from Pixar at our museum here, the UC Museum of Paleontology. And it went really well. I found it super helpful. Everybody else there found it really helpful. So I continued the project with them and kept developing those ideas and talking to different people at the studio. And now about 1.5 years later, we've developed a series of workshops that adapt processes of story development from film studios and kind of inspired by the creative process at Pixar for science communication specifically.
Right. So you haven't stopped here. I mean, it's still going, still in development. There's seems like a nice, rich future ahead for science through story. And you've got a workshop, a symposium, science through narrative, but that's in January 2018. Am I correct?
Yes, that's a symposium that I'm organizing as part of an annual biology conference. It's the annual meeting of the Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology. We're having this special symposium for a day on January 5th, 2018 in San Francisco. And the theme is Science Through Narrative, Engaging Broad Audiences. So we'll be hearing from the invited speakers are half scientists and half people from the entertainment industry. So lots of different perspectives about how to actually use narrative to engage broad audiences with science.
Oh, that's great. That's excellent. So now I'd actually like to bring Aaron Huertas into the conversation if I could. I want to make sure the connection. We were having a little bit of an issue earlier today. I think we have Aaron's sound, but we may not have an image, which, yeah, I'm really sorry because he's got a really happy smile and And there, I yeah, I can
Yeah.
hear you fine. Really, we were going to put up an avatar for you, and I guess we just didn't come up with one quick enough. So I'm going to imagine. I don't know who do you want as an avatar? Pick one. Oh, screen sharing. There you go. I'm happy to do it. See, there you go. So just we, this is we figure it out. We're DIY here, right? So if we can't get the platform to work, we make the platform work for us one way or another. So excellent job, Aaron, on your part. Aaron is an independent consultant. He had worked previously with the Union of Concerned Scientists, and now he runs his own science communication media company. They also have a lot of really great resources and an online course that you can take. We'll add those links in a little bit later. But I definitely recommend, and if you're not connected with Aaron, please do. So as Sarah was talking to us about narrative and how important narrative is, you really come from a very strategic communication side of sharing that story, developing that audience or finding that audience, identifying the audience and those kind of things. Tell us about tell us why strategic communications are important in science communication as it relates to that narrative. Hmm. Sure. Hmm. Hmm. Based on the space in which they're being communicated, not from the lab perspective always, right? I mean, the goal isn't necessarily to speak to just other scientists in your lab. The goal is to reach those in the public through news and media, through social media, through, website side of things. But where do you begin? I mean, this is, again, the origin story, which is so meaningful. I'm a scientist. I've got results or impending results on a research initiative. So where do I begin with my outreach strategy? Right. 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 Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Right. Sure. So if you know, because audience is a big part of that, of creating that strategy, um, where would you go to find that audience? I mean, Nerd Night actually is a great opportunity to do that. You know, to observe, and that ethnography is really important when you're designing that human-centered design and design thinking practice. But what's an example of a strategy maybe for differing audiences? Because one for social media is different than one for a blog or for your website or some other space. I mean, what's an example of strategy for differing audiences? Hmm. Sure. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. So what tools do you use, or maybe some others that you suggest to your clients? The tools that you can use to build that strategy, you know, kind of follow that plan, and then measure for the results, because obviously you want to be able to improve it. But what tools do you use to develop strategy? Yep. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Sure. Right on. Oh, that's great. Well, now is a good time to bring in Jen Mayer. And Jen, I'm going to make sure that all of your um, make sure your audio and your camera is turned on, and we'll just give you a second to come in. If you're having an issue, just type in to the chat here, and we can respond. But you should be good to go. We'll just give you a couple seconds. Wait for you to chime in. I know that a few people here are talking about having some audio issues. We certainly apologize for that. Some of that could easily be the platform that we're on, which has been a pretty stable platform for us so far. But it's no platform is perfect. Again, reminding you that you be on a Chrome or Firefox browser. Um, and if you're on Wi-Fi, it's even if that signal coming into the Wi-Fi is pretty strong, if it's being shared among several people, if it's at a Starbucks or a coffee shop or someplace like that where people congregate, everyone's borrowing from it, so you're only getting a piece. So it's entirely likely that that connection could keep you from joining. So we apologize. The good thing is this is being recorded, so you'll be able to come back and enjoy it anytime. In fact, I think until the sun explodes. So as long as you're signed up and registered, you'll have access to it. Hopefully the sun won't be exploding anytime soon, at least not until you get a chance to watch this. So Jen, are you there? I noticed that you're logged in, but I think we're having an issue. If you want to go ahead and you can look at the very top of your window, and you'll see a series of icons. If you want to make sure that your mic is on and your camera is on. Wait, I had your microphone for just a second. It lit up green. I got really.
All right. Hey, there we go.
I see camera.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right, we did it.
Perfect. That's great. I will definitely be reaching out to the tech support of BigMarker to they're great folks. They give us a lot of pipe for this too, because we're having 150, 200, 250 people sign up, and so they definitely give us a good amount of space on their servers in order to run these. So so I apologize.
For this. It actually the visuals and the sound's clearer than a lot of platforms I've used before. So
yeah, it really is. And I'm not going to mention the other platforms because they're all, have definitely been beneficial in one way or another, but BigMarker really just does a fantastic job of it. So for those of you who don't know Jen Mayer, she is the design director at IDEO. For somebody like me who's been a designer for 20 years, IDEO is the palace. It is the kind of a guiding beacon of learning and unlearning and relearning in the world of design for design thinking and human-centered design principles. Over the last few years, IDEO has been, well, they have IDEO CoLab now, and I think there's more of a startup IDEO group inside of forgot the name of it. I apologize. But you've also brought up IDEO U, which is a learning environment for your clients as well as employees there that are reconnecting, or because you have such diverse staff.
Yeah, exactly.
And getting to know other aspects of design, because, well, quite frankly, design is everything. Ironically, science is everything too. So it is a very interesting relationship.
There's a lot of great overlap there.
Right, of course there is, which is what drew me to develop Spacetime Labs, because for me, science and design are very similar processes, methods, and principles involved. So at IDEO U, you are the instructor of storytelling for influence, which narrative into strategic communication, and to have an impact, because we're asking audiences, I guess, to do something. So tell me about why creating influence is important in storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, telling a great story is one thing. Actually knowing what you want someone to do after they've heard that story is another. So I think, the basics of storytelling for influence is really about knowing what that call to action is, and being clear about it, and using your story to persuade someone to share your point of view, to take action in a way that you want them to take action. And I know that I realize for a lot of people that it could tend to feel a little bit icky, that you're sort of, you might interpret it as being manipulative in some way, but it's actually not what we're trying to do. I think storytelling for influence is more about creating connections and creating bridges with people, so that they can experience you're experiencing, see things through your eyes, and then be able to say, like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to do whatever it is that you need me to do in this moment. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. We developed the course at IDEO U to help people, especially in business, because so often, as you mentioned, like, our clients really have difficulty communicating. If there's, within a company, within an organization, there's something that they want to achieve, and until they can tell a great story and connect with people on a human level, it's hard to make that happen.
It really is. And you're mentioning about kind of this, maybe a preconceived notion or an expectation that getting the influence is kind of, you're trying to swindle, or, we get that. And then I think in some respects, a lot of people confuse that storytelling as marketing or advertising. Marketing and advertising are two very different things. Most people don't recognize that. Marketing is really making a connection. Marketing is really telling that story and inviting people in to be a part of it. Advertising is selling. Advertising is a coupon, an ad and a 20% off here and that kind of thing. Whereas creating...
But I will say... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to...
No, go right ahead.
I will say that, like, good advertising is an incredible storytelling thing where you are telling the inherent truth of something and again making that connection.
Sure.
So
unfortunately, we suffer from about maybe 10% or less really good advertising.
That's true. That's totally true.
But look, if you watch Super Bowl and if you care more or as much about the commercials, then it's because you're looking to be entertained. You know you're going to get sold to or marketed to, and you're okay with it because you want to see a great story develop in 30 seconds or a minute's time, and it's free for you. For the company, it's millions of dollars, but you're obviously looking to create influence, you know, with that. So where do you begin in storytelling for influence? What do you need to start?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would definitely echo Sarah and Aaron about finding that moment, finding that thing that is particularly true for you. In the course, we often talk about, like, you know, what is the personal story? What is that person or character or thing that someone can make a connection with and sort of imagine themselves in or associated with? So I think about, you know, a couple of years back in 2015, when we were starting to sort of get the first understanding of what was going on with the Syrian refugee crisis, for example. There was all of these numbers that were out there, all of these newspapers that were being written about it, and it just wasn't gaining that much traction. The photo of the little boy who had washed up ashore that came out, and all of a sudden, that photo told a story, and people paid attention in a way that they had never paid attention before because it created that personal connection, and people could say, like, this is a human life. This could be my son. This could be my neighbor. And the sudden outpouring of donations and money and people actually paying attention was flooded. Now, I'll grant you that only lasted for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and then, you know, the public attention went elsewhere. But I always think of that as an example of the power of storytelling, because that in that image that told a story and created an emotional connection, it spurred people to take action and do something in a way that all of the numbers that were so abstract couldn't do.
Sure, and probably even better known example of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, that invited people to take part in. You know, they didn't need to know all of the numbers, the statistics and facts and figures about ALS in order to take part. They saw their friends doing it. It looked like fun. It looked like sheer terror. It looked like a lot of different things. But the wave of influence that created, it really opened the door for millions of people to discover the research and the science behind ALS. And you know, it's one of those things that touches everybody. It touches, you know, at least 1 in 1 in 8 people, you know, or something. Cancer is also one of those things that unfortunately too many people are connected by. That if you first start from that connection, your origin story or what excites you, it's got to be very authentic though, right? I mean, it's that authenticity is required when you speak about what got you into science, and authenticity is really that transparency plus, you know, that integrity of that which you have for that science. You start from that place of authenticity. If you get really excited about talking about it, right? People get really excited.
It's infectious, right?
It is, absolutely. I won't go into mirror neurons and some of the other neurobiology and such that we talk about, but it's certainly a part of that. But as you're developing story for influence, you know, one of the things that you all talk about in IDOU is creating that blueprint. That's kind of really, you know, that first chapter, that first step in there. And in that is this discussion of identifying or defining your stakeholders. Talk to us a little bit about who are your stakeholders and who are not your stakeholders, because sometimes it can be easy to confuse, you know, stakeholders and not stakeholders. There's overlap, or understand who you may have influence with and who you may not be able to, which is okay too, right? I mean, it's not going to reach everybody sometimes.
Well, and I think that's an important point. That, if you are trying to create something for everyone, you will create something for no one. And in that, in your ability to be specific, this is a weird, ironic thing, actually makes it more universal. Because when you're talking like in having some sort of specific thing, you invite people into the story.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, who your stakeholders are, that's going to entirely depend on what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
So creating that blueprint of being really clear about, you know, what do I want to change? What story am I telling? Like, who are the people that I'm trying to tell it to? And what do I need them to do? You know, that's going to really help you identify who your stakeholders are. And then think about as much of identifying who they are as like, who aren't they? Who do I not need to worry about? And that can help you narrow in and say like, you know what, in this instance, I really have to speak to, you know, these 5 funders, and everyone else kind of doesn't matter. Or I really capture the imagination of these voters in this certain area. And so I'm going to focus in on there. And the more you can be, the better. And doing a little digging, doing a little research, getting really curious about the people that you're designing your story for.
And reach out to them. I mean, that's to have conversations, to find out a little bit more, to get a little bit closer to what their challenges are and whether or not you can provide value for them. When we launched Spacetime Labs, we went through a whole list of who could possibly be our clients for this: museums and universities and scientists. But then we knew the value we would be able to create for each of them was very, very different. And a lot of it had to do with budget, of course, time, place, space in which we would interact. And for us, with scientists that are, you know, in this audience right now, this is exactly it. You know, it doesn't really cost us a whole lot, doesn't cost them anything to join a CoLab, and let's have a conversation. We're learning just as much from them as they are from us.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point there, although your video is frozen, so I'm not sure if you're still talking. At least on my end. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I was going to say, as you speak to people in your target and you know, sort of narrow in on who you want to talk to, you can tell them a story multiple times and start to iterate on it and start to ask them, is this resonating with you? What pieces of it are resonant? What pieces of it don't make sense? And then start to change your story again. So doing sort of prototyping, basically, like in really low fidelity ways and trying this out with some folks who might be the kind of people that you're trying to reach, and, you know, just changing it each time and saying like, okay, this wasn't quite landing, but this is, so I'm gonna focus in there.
Right. You're not always going to get a bullseye. You're not always going to make an immediate connection, and that's okay. You're not supposed to. When you start in your research, you're not always going to get the result that you think you're going to get. So where was the delta in that difference in the result, and how do you make that change? And then so, you know, the storytelling is the same way. The story doesn't necessarily change, and it's really just how you tell it and the space in which you tell it, and you know, the tone and voice and everything else. So, you know, obviously the most important part of our CoLab is to have a collaborative and open R&D community online, where we take questions from our viewers and from our attendees. We make it pretty easy, I think, on our website to submit your questions early on, because we want to be able to answer and help you answer your questions and help you solve for the challenges that directly affect you and what you're doing, communicating either as a scientist or science communicator. And we got a lot of questions for this, which I'm really excited about. By all means, please continue to add your questions here in the chat. It would be great if you could mark them Q&A, and you see in that chat window, because then they'll go specifically to a Q&A channel, which makes it a lot easier to sort through. We have 112 people currently online, and I wouldn't want your question to get lost. So I want to start with a question that came in through our website. I won't say names. I'm sure the person on here will recognize the question, but I want to respect everyone's privacy too. So this person says, hey guys, how do we best embrace the passive voice construction of scientific papers while drawing people in at the onset and making our science accessible at the same time. As a teacher, I find my students often crave the more quote unquote creative and beginning hook slide of writing when describing their science in the paper format. So how do we best embrace the passive voice construction of scientific papers? That's not an easy one. Sarah, let's start from somebody who's probably knee deep, waist deep, chin deep in scientific papers.
Sure. Well,
Passive voice.
I think that you can avoid passive voice as much as possible in your writing, including your technical writing. Passive voice is very common in scientific writing, but that doesn't mean that you have to succumb to it. Active voice is appropriate and always more engaging, and you can and absolutely should use narrative structure in your scientific writing as well. That's something that Randy Olson also writes a lot about in his books, that you can use that and, but, therefore format, and you can kind of gauge how interesting or how well written a paper by reading the abstract. And if it has that and, but, therefore structure, it really, it grabs attention more than if you're just listing facts. So avoid passive voice, use active voice, and use narrative structure. Right. And encourage your students to do the same.
Interesting. Aaron, a comment? Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Right. Yeah. Right. Interesting. Jen, passive voice.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think there's the difference between what the way things have always been done and the way things they could actually become better. We come across this all the time in business where people believe that they have to talk in a certain way for people to take them seriously, when in fact de-jargoning things and making things more active gets your point across much clearer. They're just not used to it yet.
Right. Well, and I think anybody in the audience, all of us will certainly recognize that when you have a one-on-one conversation with somebody, you can learn so much more. You absorb it because it's personal, because it's very human. You have a very captivated, way of speaking and talking to that individual, as opposed to broadcasting where it's one person to many. Sometimes there's that interpersonal part, or if I'm telling a story and I'm not involved at all, it's still just hard to find that human connection that's really going to create either create an audience or one that matches their needs, or one that's actually going to spur them to any particular action. So I have another question here. This one's there's a good amount of setup here, but I think it's important because this is the kind of questions we really like to get here in the CoLabs, very direct and very specific. So again, no names. An intensive conservation effort to reduce soil erosion in our watershed about 20 years ago transformed a local river from a murky chocolate slurry to a clear, transparent river. With sunlight now penetrating the river to its bed, a native aquatic plant has undergone explosive growth. The plant volume displaces the surface elevation of the river by about 3 feet, and plant respiration strips the water of oxygen during hours of darkness. How can this story be told without devaluing the great erosion reduction work, which brought the river back into compliance with state water quality standards, when it seems that the water clarity benefit led to some new unanticipated problems? How to keep both the technical community and general public engaged in this story when we don't know the solution? probably my favorite. I don't want to play favorites. I shouldn't say that. But this is such a specific question. I think a lot of scientists and researchers deal with this. We solve for one problem, but then we create more. And isn't that what the scientific method does, really? We answer one question and we discover 10 more. But the questions keep getting better and the science keeps getting better. So, you know, how would you balance telling a story like this that it's a great thing, but it kind of created a different new problem?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
Would Star Wars have nearly as popular if the story ended after A New Hope?
If Luke Skywalker was an orphan.
Yeah,
right.
Blow up the Death Star, that's it.
Yeah.
Great, everybody gets to go home. No, best stories are the ones that are a series of problems. Every resolution is followed by another problem.
Right. And I would even say that you keep the connection with problem solved, problem created, right? Understand, because then it's giving the public knowledge and understanding of just how much of the ecosystem is really created or connected, right? And this is the hard work that we're all trying to do. This is the very difficult part of what the scientific method brings us. But it's great learning. It's exponential learning, and the questions just become more elegant as you keep going. So I would even answer, just as Sarah said, you are now creating an open-ended narrative that you want people to follow along to solve this new problem. They're on a journey now. So, and then not that that's going to create a new problem, but other problems will arise, you know? So, Jen, what would you pay in there?
Even in just reading the setup, I was already riveted. There's already drama.
Story in itself, isn't it? Right?
I'm like, this is amazing. And it kind of makes me think of some great storytelling out there that folks might want to use as an example. Like if you listen to Radiolab, for example, they're often telling stories really similar to this, that on the surface, it's just like this small story about one, you know, river or tributary, and then it unpacks all of this conflict and drama and, you know, this group versus that group and the plants versus the fish, and like there's so much there to tell. I think also allowing for that lack of resolution and being able to be okay with saying, like, we haven't solved it yet, but here's, and this is where the influence part is, like, here's what we need to do next. And helping people to sort of like go in that direction.
Sure.
Often an unresolved story is a more compelling story.
Yeah.
And then you can focus on what did you learn in the process that you weren't expecting.
Sure. Game of Thrones is how many seasons now? And it's, you
know,
and if it was just one off, you know, if it was it certainly wouldn't work as a documentary. But I mean, if you had just, you have this lasting story because you want to see what's going to happen next. You want the reward of your favorite hero in the picture. There are many different heroes. So yeah, you're really following along to see what's going to happen next. It's okay to talk, and I know scientists have a very hard time with speculating, and I don't mean to say that in that you should give false hope or project expectations, but at the same time, if you're curious, it's okay to talk about your curiosity too, about what might happen, because chances are your audience is thinking the same thing, or they would say, you know, I really didn't think of it like that, and open a whole new door of into your story, because yours, but understand that the audience has their version of it too, which is very personal, and you really want them to own a piece of that. You know, I think that's really important.
I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's totally normal for scientists to be concerned about people not taking them seriously or questioning their credibility if the study didn't work out perfectly, when of course that's the reality most of the time, is that it doesn't go perfectly. But you don't worry about people not thinking that you're doing your job right. I mean, the fact that the plant is now overgrown, that doesn't mean that the conservation effort failed. If anything, it was too successful. There's clearly another factor at play in this system that must be accounted for, and that's what you're trying to figure out. That's how the scientific process works. It's an ongoing journey, so that's a fantastic story.
You know, Jen and I live in a world of design where nothing is ever finished. and it
Yeah,
should never
just
be,
one at a
right?
time.
I mean, that's,
Keep
you know,
iterating.
I love clients say, you know, when we're done with the website, and I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. You're never done with it. You're never done. You're never done, right? Because design is a lab. You're constantly learning. If you're doing it right. And in science, you're constantly learning. Science is never finished. We don't know everything there is to know about astrophysics. There might be a few out there who think we do, but theoretically, I'd say we're not. Aaron, anything to add on this particular question about the watershed? Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, there's hidden treasure there, right? And there's never really a big X marks the spot if you're lucky, but rarely. Next question I have, I think we've talked a little bit about this already, but I think it's important to ask again so we can be direct, because there are a lot of different models. But this person asks, there are different approaches to story and myth. Some could be codified as formulas, as in Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. That is the monomyth, right? Dan Harmon's Story Circle and improv games, the 7-sentence story, once upon a time and every day until one day because of that, yada, yada. Do you, and I think it's probably going to all of us here, have unique templates for codified story-centric science communication? And how are you working with colleagues in story-centric entertainment, the arts, to translate these skills? Sarah, I'm not going to ask you first because I know that your big symposium coming up is bringing in entertainment, and we'll come to that because we talked about it a little bit. But that's a really good question for Jen in that storytelling for influence. Do you have that? What is that template? Is there a template, or do you break it down into a formula? Which I guess a lot of scientists probably look for a formula. I try not to, but it's an easy way to start, though, right?
It's a great way to kickstart your thinking. I personally don't use formulas per se because I feel like every story winds up being different. But it's a great tool if it's something that you want to just start playing with. You're not quite sure where to start. I find that it's more valuable to start out with that blueprint of just being really clear about who it is that I'm talking to. You know, like, do I even have the things written down here of the? I don't think I grabbed the page that had the actual. I was going to share exactly what's on the brief. But just about being really clear about who you're talking to, being really clear about what you're trying to achieve, being clear about what's your one big idea that you want to get across, because you know, even you know, movies have that log line of like, what's the one thing that you take away? Like, so if you think about like it's like that there's a killer shark attacking the beach, like that's pretty much the story. So you know, being really clear about that one thing, and then allowing yourself to explore maybe different kinds of frameworks to see which one is going to work for you. But if you, for me at least, and I think every storyteller is different, for me, if you rely too heavily on a framework, it becomes sort of robotic.
I'm going to put it out there, and I think people are going to argue with me, but episode 4, A New Hope, and episode 7, I mean, the pattern, now granted, you know, George Lucas was very vocal when he talked about using Campbell's Hero's Journey and the monomyth in order to develop Star Wars story. But then to go back and start with episode 7 and basically follow that exact same pattern. I still enjoyed the film. It was still great to watch. But understand that when you get locked into a pattern to some degree and you're not necessarily enriching it a little bit more or testing or trying something, take a chance even, you know, just to disrupt things a little bit. And I think that's because you're right. If you get too caught in a template, I think Randy Olson's ABT, his name's come up a bunch here, folks. If you don't know Randy Olson, you should really look him up. I even met him last week. He's a fantastic guy. And he's very adamant about, no, these little simple and but therefore this is it. And I, you know, to the extent I absolutely agree with him. And I think he's not against the idea of maybe adding to that or giving it maybe a little extra tone or voice and template. But for the most part, if it helps an individual start in their storytelling path and in their journey, absolutely, I think that's a great way to go. It's a
Well, another
great
thing
thing to
I'd
use.
throw in there is like there's other sort of rules of thumb and thought starters. Like there's a great video that if you just Google Ira Glass storytelling, and he talks about the importance of anecdote and reflection and sort of balancing those two things out. So, you know, anecdote is really about put me in the room, help me see what's happening, and just like making the tangible, you know, like I'm sitting in a photo studio right now. The light is coming in from the door, you know, like really painting that moment, and then reflecting like, well, what does that mean? How do I feel about it? And how should the audience feel about it? Right. Giving them those clues. And you can use that kind of stuff as well.
Aaron? I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron. Oh, yeah. Hmm. Sure, they do. Yeah, without even knowing it. And in a lot of ways, there's absolutely truth to that. Sarah, you wanted to add?
I'll just add quickly, I think there are really two tasks with storytelling. One is story development, and the other one is actually telling the story. So for story development, the exploratory phase, the introspective phase, and also thinking about your audience phase, there are lots of routes that you can go to find those elements that are really going to make your story powerful, and again, understand your connection with it. Some of the resources that were just mentioned. Also, if you check out Pixar in a Box, which is a unit on Khan Academy that's open source, they have a whole section there on storytelling, and the first chapter of it is just about finding your story. And there's some really great, simple, but surprisingly effective exercises in there. So there's a lot of stuff that can just kind of help get the gears turning about thinking in terms of story. Then when it comes to actually telling your story and crafting that message, models like the ABT format are extremely helpful, especially when you're starting. Really rigorously working with that model to make sure that you're using it effectively. That's the best way to go. And then you can, once you really have a feel for it, then you can start experimenting with things like the story spine that once upon a time, every day, but one day. And if you just Google story spine, you'll find that it'll come up right away. Or you can experiment with the hero's journey model. If you Google hero's journey, you can read Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It's a great book.
Yeah, it is.
It's also long. So if you just Google the hero's journey, you'll find lots of great summaries about it online. But yeah, I would say, you know, spend some time exploring and thinking about the story that you want to tell, but then also find some frameworks or reference points that are going to work for you. Highly recommend Aaron Nielsen's books. Yeah.
And I think as you're building that story development, it's almost like a story wiki, right? It's the same idea of, for those who are J.R.R. Tolkien readers, the Silmarillion, which is all of the backstory and everything that he wrote, for the most part, for himself before writing about the Fellowship or writing, you know, The Hobbit and all of that history. So he would have it in his head and he can explain it through the various books. It is kind of your wiki, you know, it is all of that you have built in before you. Now, as a scientist, you are, you know, your whole research, you're building all of that Wikipedia for yourself and all that research. So you have all this great material to go from. And then, like you said, you know, just applying all of that structure that you think works or maybe tells a story in the most authentic and maybe more appealing way to that particular audience, which is great. Another question. Another really good specific. I am in the behavioral sciences, and we have to constantly battle some variation of this. Quote, yeah, but I have this anecdote that I think is better than your research, unquote. Do you have any ideas of how to walk that fine line to avoid our storytelling from becoming anecdotal itself and still being able to stress how the body of research is greater than just one example? Wow, that's a really good question. Who wants to take this one on? Aaron, going to you first on this one. That's tricky. Go ahead. Mm. Mm. Sure. Mm. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
remember in television, and I started in television 20 years ago, and we were in promos and, developing all of the interstitials and everything in between programmings. And that was the word, they need to see it at least 7 times before it sticks in their brains what the tune in time and channel is going to be, so, repetition works, right? Sarah, regarding the anecdote, easy to fall back on or versus the science? How do you
Um,
walk that fine line?
well, I mean, every story is itself an anecdote in a way, and yet, as Jin said, the more specific you are, the more universal your message is. So I think if you focus on the universality of that broader theme that is emerging from your
Right.
story and make that the point, not the
Mm,
specifics, then you can avoid hanging too much on that one anecdote, because the real value of any scientific study is the broad insight that it offers about the natural world. And
sure.
that's what people are going to care about. The specific results, they might not even remember, but they're going to remember something that they learned about how the world works.
Right. Jen, do anecdotes create influence?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact
Yeah.
that Aaron just gave an
Yeah.
example of an anecdote that helped undo another anecdote, like we're all, and the
Yeah.
fact that he remembered that story, and now I'm going to remember that story, right?
Sure.
Because the stories are
Sure.
sticky, like, and that's the thing that we're able to remember. We don't, unfortunately, most of us can't remember statistics. We can't remember
Yeah.
the numbers or the most beautiful chart that you created that you put up there, but we will remember the story of the kid who almost had a seizure.
And
So
that's what we really discover, where a lot of scientists really have a harder time. It's a very comfortable place to fall back into talking about not just jargon, but really talking about numbers and statistics, those figures, because they know them very well. They have been intimate with those statistics for so long, and it's the safe place, and it's where they truly want to begin. But
yeah.
it's not at all where the public is going to. It's not where they're really going to make that connection. It's, the heart first. Scientists all the time start with the science fiction, at least, because that has a very emotive connection, and then leave breadcrumbs, allowing for that audience to discover the science themselves behind that science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And
and
the
it's
statistics,
incredibly effective.
yeah, the statistics have to go away. And
No,
like
no,
none of us,
certainly
I
not.
think it's important to say that those still stay, but you use the stories to illuminate them, right? So that you
Sure.
can bring those statistics to life for people in a way that they can have that aha moment.
Yeah,
Because if it's
right.
just the numbers where we might all feel more comfortable, then
Yeah.
there's nothing that creates that spark.
The aha moment is incredibly personal, and yeah, that's what you're aiming for. And like you said, don't ditch the numbers and the statistics altogether. Don't at all. You're definitely going to need those, but you may not necessarily be the messenger of those statistics. You should, bring them in, capture the attention, invite them into, oh yeah, and over here, here's the room if you want statistics. I'll let you,
Mm-hmm.
and let them discover them for themselves, because then they can be super powerful.
Mhm.
I have just another here question that says, do you have any tips, tricks for storytelling when you write a person more than once? For example, if you're a university communicator, you'll write multiple stories about a researcher over time. So how do you keep it fresh and still seem authentic? Great question. Sarah, character development kind of a thing, right?
Character development and also cutting a story together. A film artist once told me that you can cut together a dozen completely different films from exactly the same footage. So you can tell many stories about the same person from different angles. So just think about if your audience is changing, then of course the way that you pitch that story is going to change. If your audience is always the same, think about different goals that you can aim for and how the story changes that way and see what happens.
Right. Aaron? Right. Sure. Jen?
Yeah, I would echo everything that Sarah and Aaron are both saying. And at IDEO, we're often interviewing people to get design inspiration and then telling their stories back to our clients. And we'll talk about one person. People are multifaceted, and their stories are multifaceted. So you might, depending on the point that you're trying to make in that moment, you'll tell part of the story there, and then another part of the story in a different moment, and sort of let that unfold. Like you're allowing someone to get to know this person in ways from lots of different angles.
Sure, sure. Our last website question, then I want to take just a couple of here that are from attendees and viewers. I know we're going a little bit longer, a little bit over time. If anybody has to bail, I totally get it. But if you can stay on for just a few more minutes, it would be awesome. Totally up to you. One last question: how do we make sure? And we did talk a little bit about this, but more directly, how do we make sure that storytelling isn't spin, in quotes, or also in quotes, selling out on the research we do? I'd like my research to reach a larger audience, but don't want to manipulate people. And that kind of goes to the influence discussion that we had a little bit earlier. Jen, you want to expand maybe a little bit on that? Because it feels kind of, spin, that's kind of the feeling of it. And I don't want people to get past that, because that's what's keeping them from getting into this, starting this journey. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just a question of authenticity, right?
Sure.
It's what are you truly trying to communicate? And if you feel like something is spin, then maybe communicating it in the wrong way. Maybe like take a look at that feeling and to try and unpack it. But if you're when you're just genuinely looking to create a connection and find the way that you and I can connect on a deeper level, like that's never going to be spin when you're coming from an authentic place.
And advocacy is a perfect example of where you're trying to reach a group of people that are, well within your audience, that have the same concerns that you have. And you want to bring them into, give them a call to action, give them, define, and that kind of ties into a question that we got here in the CoLab, but I would like Aaron to just talk a little bit more about, in terms of the strategic side of avoiding the selling out voice. What is that? Right. 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 Wow. Yeah. Mm. Right. Mm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Sure. You know, when the news broke earlier this year about the TRAPPIST-1 system, it was the acting administrator at the time who said, you know, uh, three of these planets around here are Earth-like. They're within the Goldilocks zone. It's going to take us 100 miracles to get there, right? Um, People thought it would take us 20 miracles, 10 miracles to get to the moon. And that's because those are the things we can't see yet. Those are the things we haven't discovered yet. The science hasn't taken us there yet, right? And we launched a real quick video after it came out because it was just an inspiring story because people are drawn to that science first by that science fiction. Holy cow, there are worlds that we could eventually go to. Chances are it's going to be your great 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 grandchildren that'll get there if we get there. But what are all those things that really do have to happen? Because there's real science in between miracle 1 and miracle 100. And likelihood, yeah, we will get into ratios later. But the idea that you have created that interest through first that science fiction, which then draws people into, I mean, I know a lot of scientists who got into the study of astrophysics and astronomy just from the book or movie Contact alone. That the search for extraterrestrial intelligence seems like, yeah, what are the chances? Oh, of course, but what are the chances we do anything? That's not the drive. That the imagination is that powerful that it drives us to do these things because someday someone will do X. And it's everything that we learn along the way to get there. Sounds like design, doesn't it, Jen? Sounds like science,
Yeah,
doesn't it,
right.
Sarah? You know, how are we going to get there? You know, and that's not the question you ask. The question is, where do we start, right? So, and Sarah, when is spin that kind of a beneficial piece of thing? I mean, when you do feel like you're spinning a little bit, not selling out, because I don't think scientists do that, but I believe that they have that feeling of, you know, I don't want to spin the story, but I do want to create some interest beyond what's possible. How do you do
Yeah.
that?
Well, I really wouldn't call it spinning. I mean, every
Yeah.
story that you're telling, you're thinking very carefully about how to frame it for that audience, for that goal that you have. And I think, as Jen said, as long as your focus is telling an honest story, an authentic story, then that's going to come across. Don't make the goal convincing people. Because if your goal is to convince people, it's very easy to end up talking down to people, and people can always tell when they're being talked down to, and that's going to shut them off immediately and not want to hear a single thing that you're saying. So instead, if you make your goal to take the audience on a journey with you and let them discover knowledge for themselves along the way through your story, that's going to be much more effective, and they're going to end up learning something and maybe even being convinced without you even having to spell it out for them.
That
Amen.
has to be, yeah, I don't have a rewind button right now, or else I'd go back and do that. But if you're watching this now, a recorded version of it, why don't you just pause, go back a little bit, and I want you to hear that thing one more time, because I think that's a critical piece for people to understand. That's great. Thanks, Sarah.
And
that's awesome.
I think that pretty much echoes what everyone's been saying. And I'll just add really quickly that a lot of times scientists are worried about sensationalizing or over dramatizing their science. And that's really not what storytelling is about. I think any scientific study, there is a fascinating story there. And it's just a matter of discovering the narrative elements that are already inherent in your work, in the events that took place, and bringing those to light, illuminating them.
Sure.
Who's your character? Were the obstacles to their objectives? How did they get around those obstacles? What did they learn in the process? That's all there.
Yeah, no
already.
doubt, no doubt. There's a question here that came up in the lab that I want to bring up. It's very simple. Mackenzie has I think had a few comments in here and a couple of questions, but one that I think's great. She asked very early here. What if your story has no call to action? I'm going to say, first of all, it's certainly possible, but I do believe that your science does have a call to action, but it's hidden. So what if you feel like your story has no call to action, or if it's hidden, how am I going to find it? Sarah, I'll start with you on there. What if your story has no call to action, or how do I discover it? That goes a bit to goal. What do you want people to do, or what do you want them to feel, or necessarily? Does there have to be a call to action? I'm sorry, go ahead.
You don't even have to call it a call to action, but if you have a story that you want to tell, what's the reason that you want to tell that story?
Boom. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
That might be your call to action right there.
Yeah, Aaron. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Jen,
I mean,
call to action.
I could even imagine sort of in that moment either asking people for reflection. Like if you truly don't know what the call to action is, like asking people to reflect on what you said and discover what's meaningful to them, or ask the audience in some way to play back what they think needs to happen next. Like could use it as a moment of conversation. But yeah, I can't imagine, like if there's a story where you truly don't know what you want someone to do with it, then I would start to ask, is this a story that I need to tell? Or maybe there's a different story that needs to come out that'll be a lot clearer.
Sure. Sure. Maybe more of an origin story, which is always my favorite. I always go to origin stories just because that's my escape. Well, in science fiction, it's very easy to have a wormhole and time travel, and it kind of breaks the gap of, story, suspension of disbelief. In that sense, that's why I go to origin story, because when you're stuck, it's easy to go back to the very beginning. So,
Nick, I'm going to have to I'm going to need to drop off now because I have another meeting in the room I'm going to be in right now. Needs to make
gotta go. Well, why don't you invite everybody in and just bring everybody around the table? Let's go ahead and the whole IDEO crew would be fantastic to have.
Exactly. We'll just join me.
Jen, thanks so much for joining us. Your perspective has definitely shed an awful lot of light on some tough questions, and hope you'll come back and join other CoLab and an opportunity to talk and have people ask you some more questions. So thanks again for everything and for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. And Sarah and Aaron,
Thanks,
great
Jen.
meeting you both, and hope we all connect soon. All right.
Great.
Take care.
Thanks, Jen. I'll see you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is add some of the links in here, chat of some things that we've mentioned earlier. I want to make sure that people can reach out to them. One link that I'm adding is actually from a Fast Company article that asks or talks about the 5 skills that you'll rarely see in job postings, but that you definitely, and I'll let you discover for yourself here what exactly number 1 and that list of 5 things is going to be. I think you can probably guess. Also, the Pixar in a Box on Khan Academy. That is a free class that is totally open source from folks at Pixar. And that's a really cool course. Just the trailer for that course alone is a lot of fun, and it gives you good insights. Perfect people involved with telling that story for Khan Academy. So those are neat folks. I also have a link in here for the Science Through Narrative Symposium that Sarah will be leading. That will be, is that in San Francisco? Yeah, it's in San Francisco.
Yes, it'll be in San Francisco, January 5th, 2018. And the registration will open this fall. If you go to that link and just go through the SIGB website, you'll find the registration page. If you're not able to attend in person, though, we will be publishing papers based on the invited talks in the Society's journal. So that'll be available too.
And I'm not sure if this link is the correct one. I hope so. The one that you sent me for the mailing list, for your Science Through Story mailing list.
Yeah, it looks like you posted the link from my Twitter page, which is fine. That works too.
Oh, okay, that's fine. For those of you who have not been to sciencecommunicationmedia.com, I definitely recommend going there. That is Aaron's company, Aaron's group there. And on this particular link is to his page for a free online course and a bunch of different resources, lots of videos, some ebooks and other material. Highly recommend it. I discovered this page when we were doing some initial research on Spacetime Labs, but it's really opened our minds to a lot of different concepts and ideas and strategic thinking, specifically for science communication. So Aaron, this is, again, thank you for putting that out for all of us, because I think that one's really important. Yeah, man, no, absolutely. And I also want people to go take a look at IDOU. This one is not free. However, if you reach out to your principal investigators or whoever is controlling the purse at where you are in studying, I think it's absolutely worthwhile. The returns on the investment by taking this class, I think, in getting involved with storytelling for influence, highly recommend it. IDEO is really just a fascinating company. It is the design lab in my opinion as a designer, and also on our website, SpacetimeLabs.co /the lab. We also have a bunch of different resources and video to explain a little bit more about science experience and how you can develop some of the skills, some of your own resources in order to develop your science communication. And also wanted to give huge thanks to UC Berkeley's Museum of Paleontology, UCMP. They were a big help in getting us a great crowd that we have today, which has been great. They've been sharing us quite a bit through their social networks, and it's been helpful spreading the word. They've been very supportive. So thank you very much, UCMP, for all your support. Big thanks also to Liz Neely and the folks at Story Collider. She was also spreading us across Twitter. Thanks to IDOU for loaning us Jen Mayer for an hour and 15 minutes. It was great to have her. And also to my friend Dan over at NinjaComms and to Gemma over at Science Disrupt. They're also huge supporters of us. They're sharing us throughout their networks and bringing us great ideas, great conversations. You've also heard, like I said, a couple of names today passed around. Randy Olson is one of those names. If you have not read any of Randy Olson, if you have not seen his TED-Med talk, just look him up, R-A-N-D-Y, last name Olson, O-L-S-O-N. Really cool guy. And thanks Sarah and Aaron for introducing me to him. When I called him, he was in DC. So I literally dropped what I was doing and just went into town and got to hang out with him and with Jade Lovell. And that was too cool.
Very cool.
We had a lot of fun. And we're already starting to talk about maybe developing something together, either in a CoLab or in some other kind of a separate space. But we will let everybody here know about when that happens, because that's not something you want to. Randy is a really, really neat guy. Keep the conversation going. Please contribute to the story on Twitter with your size story. If you have any other questions that you want to share, by all means, please do there. You can reach out to us at the website as well. I'm going to try to follow up as best I can through the questions that have been added here in the chat, and maybe call some of those out and bring them into Twitter. If not, then I will do my best to try to reach out to you. It's going to be kind of tough. But look, I'm going to try it anyway, because I think you have some really tough questions here. These CoLabs work when we get to hear from the audience and we get their questions, when we hear their concerns, their challenges of going forward. Our whole idea is to have an online R&D community to deal specifically with the challenges you have in science communication. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jen. Thank everybody for joining us in the CoLab today. And this will be, I think the Big Marker platform will send you a notice when the recording is available. And awesome. You can please continue the conversation. Thanks to everybody.
So much, Nick.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for listening in. It's been fun.
Thank you.